Bernie Sanders is doing pretty well.
Oh, let's hear about that.
Yeah. So for as horrible as things and bleak as things seem, civil asset forfeiture is still around. We're going to go to war again with Iran. Everything is going up in flames. The world may end tomorrow. Who knows? But this is an article written by Ryan Grimm in The Intercept called "Can the Bernie Sanders Campaign Alter the Course of the Democratic Party?" And I think he's basically making the argument that yes. He opens the article with a relatively long anecdote about a sort of blue-collar worker in California who ends up getting displaced into Las Vegas, making the comments that, you know, that's not something people are looking to do. People are forced into that sort of situation. But that he was a Democratic Party voter and sort of is the sort of Pod Save America type crowd and really bought in 2015, 2016 that like, no, this is on lock for Hillary and Hillary's going to win. There's no way that Trump's going to win. And like his world was sort of turned upside down. Now, I know this is anecdotal, but I think that there are a lot of people that can relate to that sort of experience, right? And he mentions here in the article that in the 2016 election, Sanders' strategy was different, right? He relied on kind of being a protest candidate, that the strategy was to target the later states and to give Hillary a run for her money and hopefully pull her to the left. That didn't happen. There was rigging that was going on. There was institutional bias. There was a lot of hand wringing over Bernie Sanders trying to co-opt the party and finger wagging and things like that. And so it may not have had the intended effect that Bernie would have wanted. And it's clear that this time around, Bernie is building on that infrastructure. He's building on that strategy and has moved away from trying to be a protest candidate and is campaigning in a way that can win it. So some of the major things that they point out here is it's essentially 5 years worth of, research data that the campaign has to draw on, and they know where they are, playing strongly. They know where their difficult areas are. They know where the areas that have the highest opportunities for improvement are, and they're going with a ground game style candidacy that is in some ways kind of old school, but in other ways it's completely new and completely unique because he has the ability to leverage social media, internet, and organizing, mass scale organizing in kind of this traditional grassroots sort of way. So one of the things I think, so when we talk about Bernie Sanders has a pathway forward to the nomination, right? If at this point, I hear people that are saying it maybe is a coin flip between Biden and Sanders. Not a lot of people thinking Warren is going to make the cut. Not a lot of people thinking Buttigieg is going to make the cut, despite the fact that he's got a lot of surge at the moment. But a lot of people
money surge, I would suppose.
Yeah, money surge. But even in Iowa, like he's done well in recent polls. For as much as the mainstream media wanted to make Klobuchar the thing, even I was saying after the last debate, the fact that she got to talk a lot and mention some specific policies made it so that I thought maybe she'll garner some support. That didn't happen. So it's really kind of like Bernie Biden, right?
And not only that, we just had another thing we didn't have time for today, but we'll cover on Monday. Bloomberg just passed Buttigieg. And again, we talked about that before, that they have basically the same audience. It's so...
Right, and the fact that Bloomberg entered the race so late and he's running crazy amounts of television and radio ads in early states could have the effect of siphoning voter support from Pete Buttigieg or Joe Biden. So my read on this is that Bernie looks a lot better than what a lot of people are saying, this kind of 50-50, it's going to be Biden or Bernie. I think for the first time in a while, Bernie looks like the strongest candidate by a good margin. And what that means, I keep going back to what it looked like when Donald Trump won the Republican primary in 2016. That changed the Republican Party relatively quickly, right? Right up until he won the primary, you had your Mitt Romney types and your John McCain types who were basically, and your Paul Ryan types, who were just like, he will never be a part of the Republican Party, and we basically a pearl clutching kind of like this braggadocious. He's this uncouth person who just he'll never be a part of the party. And then 6 months later, top to bottom, it is the party of Trump, right? And I imagine that when you have a very populist candidate like this that has a very specific way they're running their campaign and is being extremely true to that, it's hard to imagine the party not changing drastically if we were to win the primary. And my calculus is that he's got a lot better chance to win the primary than I would have thought 6 months ago.
Yeah, I'm gonna smile and say I'm glad I've always like. And you remember a year ago I was like, Sanders is gonna win. Everything is set for him to win. All the dominoes look like they're gonna go his way. So, I mean,
Hey, I'm still bracing for disappointment.
I know. Man. Oh yeah, no, fair. But we talked about this a little before the show, and just in terms of like labor, the point I was making about timing. Sanders' strategy that he's doing right now may not have worked 16 years ago. It might not have worked 20 years ago. It might have gotten laughed out like Howard Dean 8 years, or maybe not 8 years ago, like 12 years ago. But right now, in the time we're at, the Democratic Party has abandoned the people, and it has for a long period of time. Barack Obama ran like a Bernie Sanders, maybe a Bernie Sanders light in retrospect in his campaign, and then immediately turned in the general and was like, yeah, I'm just kidding. I'm actually just going to be a moderate Republican for the rest of my reign. But people wanted change, and people have wanted change for a long time. You have a country where half the people can't afford a $400 expense. 500,000 people are going bankrupt every year because they can't pay medical bills. 30,000 to 40,000 people are dying every year because they can't get health insurance or can't afford treatment. You have seniors who are siphoning their medicine. You have an America that is acting more and more like a third world country. At the same time, a mass of billionaires are being created, and that's getting more and more. So there's never been more billionaires, more millionaires, and there's also never been more people that are cutting their pills in half. So it is a situation like this, because what Sanders is representing is a change of government, how government works, what we prioritize, but more importantly than anything else, who is important. Right now, who is important? Billionaires, millionaires, and then maybe some other issues that maybe certain wealthier or highly voting constituencies can make. And Sanders is banking on, no. We're going to go with regular people. And you have to understand how big of a shift that is for the Democratic Party. And again, a lot of people are like, oh, the Democratic Party is like going to rig it like they did. No, the Democratic Party almost lost to a guy that had almost no base of support at the beginning of that election. I want to remind everyone, Bernie Sanders' campaign back in 2016 started with him in front yards talking to a whole dozen of people at a time in plastic lawn chairs. No one thought anything of him. No one thought he was going anywhere, and he ended up getting 45% of the pledged of the votes. Obviously, the delegates were a bit different back then. But my point is always the same on this. The Democratic Party has never been more concisely behind a single person. The media for the Democrat, every person on CNN, every person on MSN voted for Hillary Clinton. Hillary had all the business connections laid up. She had Barack Obama backing her up. She had all the money you could ask for. She had all of the delegates, the unpledged delegates that you could ask for. She had the media back. Everything was in her favor, and she only got 55% of the vote. Again, if the Democratic Party, and they will never have that amount of energy. They do not. They are way more split than they are now. Granted, they're still very established, but they have nowhere near that kind of centralized power. Biden doesn't have that power towards them. No one does. It's way more split. So they can never replicate what they did in 2016. And they've had concessions that they've made, and they haven't been the greatest concessions. Superdelegates are still a thing in the Democratic Party. But it's in the last 40 years, it's never been more equal. So, with all that being said, Bernie Sanders has a real chance. He's always had a real chance. And don't be fatalist about this legitimate chance. He can win. And if there's enough people backing him, he will.
So I wanted to point out a lot of the analysis that you'll see in the mainstream press focuses on the path to electoral victory and what is possible, right? So it's usually put in this sort of, you're either trying to reach out to constituencies that don't normally vote, or you're trying to grab constituencies that normally vote for a different flavor of politician. And so what Bernie supporters are saying universally is it's not either or, it's both, right? We're just trying to get everyone, right? So what you're seeing is, in particular, minority voting bloc support, which has a tendency to skew very toward the establishment, has slowly been, a lot of that support has slowly gone from Biden, the very establishment pick, over to Bernie, little at a time, slowly but surely. But the Bernie campaign is unapologetic about the fact that they are absolutely also trying to expand the voting population, right? So young voters are a big one. They mention here toward the end of the article, it says, on caucus night, turn on the TV early, and if the moderator tells you there is a large voter turnout, we win. If they tell you there's low voter turnout, we lose. It's really as simple as that. And that's the kind of getting that young voter. People were saying, oh, they're not going to really turn out in 2016. And they were more or less right, at least in the primaries. And there is hope that we will increase that young person voter turnout.
And in 2018, they did come out. They did in 2018.
Yeah, they did.
The numbers were up double digits in 2018, which is supposed to be an off year. And what did we get when we had that? Did you see AOC get blocked by the Democratic Party? No. She beat Crowley. She beat the number 4. That's it. She took it over. Again, the biggest detriment that I currently see to Bernie Sanders winning is people not thinking it's possible. People thinking that there's too much corruption. That's not the right way to look at. That's not what corruption is. Corruption is a slightly higher wall on a wall that already exists. It's not a redone wall that you can never get through. Bigger army diplomacy. Say it with me. Bigger army diplomacy.
Win by winning.
Win by winning. If Sanders has enough people, he wins. They can maybe sway and they can maybe take around the edges through voter suppression, through this or that, the other thing. They can maybe switch 5% of the vote around. So Sanders just has to win by 6. That's all he has to do. And where he's going, that works. So it's like one thing Paul was saying about youth vote. One thing that I keep hearing on TV, and if you listen for it, you hear the same, is they say, oh, the youth doesn't turn out. The youth doesn't vote. So if you are youth and you think, I'm not going to vote because I don't think he'll win, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're shooting everyone else in the foot because you're being a fatalist. Vote. You win by winning. You don't win by punching water, and you don't win by doing nothing.
Yeah, if they think you won't vote and you do, that's like a 2-vote swing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just all wins. That's the kind of thing that, you point out the 2018 surge in voter population, and I think that will carry over into 2020 as well. And we talk about this on the show a lot when we look at poll results, that previous presidential election year statistic is often brought in. So my perception is that often younger voters are underrepresented in polling results. So my hope is that if the young vote really does come out, that we will see, instead of Bernie Sanders in a statistical tie for first, that he will in reality be winning by 5 or 10 points, which would be just really awesome.
Can you imagine if Sanders gets 35 or 40% of the Iowa caucus vote?
Can you imagine if he wins Iowa and New Hampshire? Now, a lot of folks are saying, don't hold your breath. Like he may not win Iowa. Like New Hampshire is kind of a lock for Bernie Sanders. Like he's probably going to win New Hampshire.
Same with Nevada.
Yeah, same with Nevada. But Iowa is going to be close. What if it's not? Right? What if it's not?
And again, we what did we see in 2018? All the progressive candidates did 3 to 4% better than they were polled to, and the establishment candidates going against them did about 1 to 2% worse. So if things are consistent and they're driving the direction that they're already moving, this is a real thing. And then we have the ability. Sanders gets in. Sanders beats Trump. We can undo the war in Iran. We can pull our troops out of Iraq, and that will be with Tulsi Gabbard's help. We can change domestic policy, and we can basically do what happened with FDR when he got in office. And
Everyone will get a pony.
yeah. Well, that's Urban Supreme.
Ah, that's right.
That's also you get everyone gets a toothbrush, but no, the pony is your federal identification pony. You have to have it with you at all times.
Keep your federal identification pony with you.
And then we use zombies to generate power. That's another one of his Vermin Supremes. I should say his points.
We need like a mega UN ticket with Vermin Supreme and Lord Buckethead. Just hanging out in the UN, being like, "We represent the West."
Yeah.